Hey everybody, this is Malik Foster. I'm a co-host for the Counterpoints podcast, and I'm joined by my fellow co-host, excuse me.
What's
Y'all
going
like
on, everybody? This is Everett Stevenson, one of the co-hosts of the Counterpoints podcast.
Hey, everybody, and I'm your third co-host. My name is Samantha Adams. And yes, just like my cohort said, we would like to welcome you to our Counterpoints podcast. So we have a really good topic for you. We always do. But before I jump into that, I do want to tell you guys we're coming up on our 3rd-year anniversary. So I just wanted to point that out. We've been doing this, rocking with y'all for coming up on 3 years now, and we want to let you know that we love and appreciate you for that. So, all right, now our topic is a real serious one today. Today we're talking about domestic violence. We often talk about things like mental health and things like that, and promoting Black love and Black family and building Black families and stuff. But there's also a dark side, right? And that dark side includes domestic violence. What triggered the topic for this today was the Keke Palmer situation. So Keke Palmer was with her baby daddy. I can't remember his name. I have to look it up. But first, there was the whole controversy about what she wore to the Usher concert, right? That was about a couple months ago. We did a podcast on that. Y'all make sure y'all check it out. Then it came out that she left him. His name is Darius Jackson. That she left him, and she filed for sole custody of her son and a restraining order because of domestic violence. The situation got kind of crazy. Darius Jackson's brother came out and pretty much admonished his brother. Then her mom came out and was pretty much like, no, how are you saying something now? You admonishing him now when I came to you a couple of years ago when you didn't do or say anything to him. You just kind of just was like, I used to be that way, And so the thing of it is that, and then Keke Palmer was awarded temporary full custody of their son. So, when talking about domestic violence, there's so many different versions and variations of what that looks like, right? And a lot of times when people think about it, we just think about, some guy beating up on some girl, right? But domestic violence is a lot more than that. It's not always a man putting his hands on a woman. It's not always a man and a woman, right? And so I think that, just kind of jumping on into it, I think it's important that we touch on it because it is a very serious situation. Guys, do you want to add? You're on mute.
No, absolutely. Definitely is a one that does need to be discussed. From the standpoint of one, just leaving it out here, taking the stance. No one should be putting their hands on no one. I think one of the things that we kind of notice when we look at this situation a lot of times is we see it when it's being discussed as far as like men putting their hands on women. Naturally, because of course they feel like men have more of a stronger makeup as far as like physical muscle mass and things of that nature. So that's kind of something that's being shown, but we also want to be objective in this show as we like to do and show the counterpoint of domestic abuse because it happens often. It happens often, verbally and physically. And some of the ways that we see that happen on the other side, which I know there's clips and things that we may see online where women are fighting guys, and that kind of is like taken as a joke. You know what I'm saying? We see a lot of times that people, laugh and, kind of look at it as like, oh, wow, it's kind of comical. It's not comical, but people look at it like it's a comical type of situation when a woman is putting her hands on a man. However, when when the roles are reversed, now it's kind of viewed as now it's kind of viewed as another situation. Now it's kind of viewed as like, okay, now this is an abusive type of situation. But before it's kind of like, oh, that's just kind of playfulness. So I think that that's something that also has to be put on the table because I think that when we talk about this topic, we're not talking about it just strictly from men abusing women. We're talking about it as people abusing each other. And whether that's, in a more of a personal, physical abuse, and or another form of abuse would be, emotional. Another one, like you said, with the conversations and the tactics of, trying to guilt someone on your emotions or feelings and make them feel like they're the only reason why you do the things that you do. That's the same thing that you have abusers say, I wouldn't have hit you if you didn't do this, or I wouldn't act this way. And on the flip side, the woman, oh, I wouldn't be acting irrational if you would have just do this. You know what I'm saying? Those are both abusive terms, and it's things that we wanted to kind of look at here today and talking about how domestic violence occurs for both parties within the relationship, and how, we should try to strive to do better.
Yeah, I was just gonna say quickly about the Kiki Palmer situation. Yeah, so this situation involves Kiki Palmer, her boyfriend, and also the third party, their 8-month-old son. He's probably like maybe 11 months now, but their under 1-year-old son. It's a very complicated situation because she reported that it's been 2 years of abuse from him, mental and physical abuse. She said that he threatened her, of course, physically, but I don't know if he put his hands on her physically or not. But she did say he lunged at her, maybe grabbed her, did some things like that. I'm not sure if he struck her or not, but that's something to be determined. But she was granted the temporary restraining order and sole custody, like Sam, my co-host, said. I do think it's a very interesting situation to where a lot of people will say like the big fuss that he made about the Usher concert. Maybe that's what it was about. Maybe he's more of a controlling person, has a controlling nature. I know he is in the fitness industry. We could take a look at that because sometimes those guys, when you're doing fitness and all that stuff, they try to get a little edge. Maybe he's on a little something, but that's all speculative. We can speculate a lot of different things, what's true, what's not. Is Keke Palmer telling all the truth? Because they do have some iPhone recording, I believe, of some of the conversation that was going on. So that's what made people definitely sway their opinion to Keke's side of the things, and I think that's what helped determine the judge's ruling as well. Sam, do you have any additional information? You do.
Yes, I do. Just give me 1 second. I'm pulling it up. According to NBC News, there was some revelations about the domestic violence case between them. First, it said that Darius Jackson stomped Keke Palmer's prescription glasses, dumped her belongings, and threw her car keys across a parking lot via court docks. That goes to more so emotional and psychological abuse, right? Because if you're behaving that way, putting somebody in fear and you're making the person afraid. And the saddest part about domestic violence, when you wear on somebody's mind and emotions like that, like you don't feel like you have a way out. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of women don't leave. Another allegation is that, I'm not gonna say why a lot of women don't leave, why a lot of people don't leave, right? Darius Jackson allegedly almost hit Keke Palmer with his car after breaking into her home to assault her in front of their son. Now, that's a problem, right? And like Malik said, this has been going on for 2 years. And so, for him to allegedly break into her house to put his hands on her is not okay. I don't know. It doesn't really provide when all of these things happened, but it did. But NBC News did also report that in her allegations, she wrote that since they broke up in early October, he's become even more unhinged, volatile, and dangerous, and she fears for her and her son's safety. And that's disconcerting. You know what I mean? And so when you talk about being controlling and those things, you know, you're right, Malik. I don't know if it has anything to do with working out, if he's taking medication, if he's taking like steroids and things like that, because steroids do have side effects that could potentially cause people to become more aggressive and violent. But at the same time, the behavior is unacceptable, right? Especially if it's true, it's unacceptable. If it's not true, let's be clear. If it's not true, that's also unacceptable, right? Because if it's not true, it has a potential to ruin his life. But in their relationship, as we discussed before, she's the breadwinner, so it's almost like, what would she have to lie about, right? Because I think a lot of times we do see women lie, men lie too about domestic violence, and in different ways. And so it's really sad because they have a baby, and this child is going to have to grow up, with all of this stuff on display for the world, right? And so, like, a lot of times when domestic violence happens and there's children involved, those children deal with it in silence, whether it be they go get therapy or whatever, but the world doesn't have to know about it. But now you have the entire world invited into their circumstance. And that right there gets a little, that makes it a little sad. I mean, the baby is very, very young. So, the likelihood of him remembering anything is pretty small. And it's actually pretty much guaranteed that he's not going to remember anything, right? Because he's only a few months old. But what about later on down the line, right? Because they don't stop being his parents just because he's little, right? So, and there's some trauma going on. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens, and just, I don't know. Did you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I wanted to add that, a lot of these domestic violence situations, especially from the man committing domestic violence towards the females, it's about control. I can see this situation being about a controlling situation between both parties, right? Kiki Palmer trying to establish control. Darius trying to establish control. Just the family, the relationship period. Because one report was like that he wanted to take Kiki Palmer said Darius wanted to take their son to a football game, and she didn't want to, and he got a little aggressive, and one thing led to another. So a lot of this stuff is about control and establishing dominance from both sides. So it's interesting to see what more facts come about, what's going to happen with that. So I just wanted to make that point. You got anything else on this, E, or we can go on to the next little segment we got here?
Yeah, no, I just think that we're just gonna have to watch and see how that develops. You know what I'm saying, and see what other information comes on. But I know we can kind of move on to another topic that was recently brought into mainstream society, which was the alleged abuse that was suffered by the R&B artist Cassie from the music mogul of Brother Love, P Diddy. And there was recently a lawsuit, I believe, that was filed by Cassidy that alleged some activities that took place throughout their relationship. And it was some shocking allegations that were made. And it was also talks about abuse in that situation as well. So thought we would discuss it. Of course, that situation was handled as far as the allegations and things, and the lawsuit was swiftly, settled outside of court, of course. And so like it's like maybe one day that this thing happened, but I believe like within that day, it garnered a lot of attention from some of the alleged activities that were taking place. And then also, I think some of the other things that kind of spurred outside of that, you started seeing people pulling up articles and stories about other things that they have heard taking place at the behest of, allegedly Puffy or Diddy Combs. So I thought that this was definitely a conversation that could be, or excuse me, a picture that could be brought into this, considering recently that we've kind of had these two major celebrities brought up dealing with uh, domestic violence and abuse. So yeah, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that or what you say. A lot of people are speculating, of course, that because he settled that it may be true. Others are alleging that because he may have had other people who could witness, some of these events that they may have been true. Excuse me.
Well, I'll tell you this: a lot of people did say Diddy was more on the. He has a lot of period interest, put it like that. A lot of people say that when they went to his house and all of the things he has done, he is surrounded by a lot of notorious situation. I know the Tupac being one of the more infamous ones, so that plays a factor there. Also, his recent billionaire status, we can't forget the motive there, because Casey, she's been that situation was a long time ago, like her with her and Diddy. It's been a while since they've been together, to my knowledge. So it does make it look like a money grab, and I could see how a lot of people can say, okay, so if what you're saying is true, Casey, basically you're saying that, I'm not saying I agree with this or not, but I'm just saying this is what some people I saw on social media said, that like basically your body is for sale, like your body could be bought, basically. So that's an interesting perspective. So like, hey, if you have enough money, it's all good. So some people are saying, well, R. Kelly probably would be free if he had enough money. Maybe he was broke. So we don't know. We don't know. So is this what people are saying? I'm not saying that I agree with that or not. I mean, if that's what she wanted, and she feels like that's the justice that she wanted, and she received it. It was kind of interesting how quickly things were solved. I guess, Diddy didn't want a lot of stuff coming out, and just said, hey, let me just wrap this up. I see an opportunity to do that. And I think that's what he proceeded to do. Um, Sam, I'm curious on your take on this from a female perspective.
So, I think that is interesting. I do find it incredibly interesting that they settled so quickly. I don't know whether or not I want to say that it was in fact a money grab, because that's the thing about being a victim of abuse, including sexual abuse. You don't always come forward. People don't always come forward right away. Sometimes it does take years for them to come forward. A lot of that has to do with all of the things that go around that are surrounding that, right? There could be shame, there could be fear, there could be just wanting it to go away. Because when you come forward, essentially you have to relive all of it. You are putting yourself in the space to be criticized and called a liar. And there's all these other negative connotations that come with it, or you just don't want to think about it. You just want it to go away. You know what I'm saying? So because that often happens, the amount of time it took between them breaking up and this lawsuit coming out, it's not surprising to me. The timing of it with regards to that person being arrested for Tupac's murder, and there are rumors that Diddy had something to do with it. I think that part is kind of ironic because the lawsuit came out after those rumors started to float. I don't think when you made the comparison to R. Kelly, I don't think that these two situations can compare, because the situation with R. Kelly is there were so many women over such a long period of time. You know what I'm saying? So because there were so many women over such a long period of time and everybody's detailing all these stories and incidents, and it was also over different like states, right? So I think that situation with R. Kelly is much, much more different, especially too, because there also, I just want to be clear about R. Kelly. it wasn't just allegations of him being with young girls, right? There was also allegations of him abusing, neglecting, kidnapping grown women. So, you know, a lot of times when people talk about R. Kelly, they're like, oh, yeah, I blame the parent. No, but so there's also plenty of people that have come forward about R. Kelly that are grown and were grown when their situations allegedly took place. Now, as it relates to whether or not it happened, I have absolutely no idea. The time, how quickly, and the reason why I said that, how quickly it settled is interesting, is because, you know, as an attorney, we often like to just kind of go through everything. And his attorneys could have been like, you know, because here's the thing, what people don't know is that when you go ahead and you file a lawsuit, you have to understand a demand letter is sent first. There are negotiations that take place before anything is filed with the court when you're talking about a civil lawsuit. So his attorneys very well may have already known, like, this is not a good look for you, right? But it's whatever you want to do, right? Or they could have wanted to fight it and Diddy wanted it to go away and was like, cut the check. Well, not even cut the check because the money was apparently allegedly wired. But I'm sure it just wanted the whole
Well,
thing to
with the
go.
Me Too movement and everything, Sam, I think that was a decent decision on his team's part because, you know, you go through trial, maybe more stuff will pop up, more people will come forward. You never know. You start
Right.
losing your sponsorships and deals real quick. But if you can kind of resolve it pretty quickly, you know, you kind of minimize the greater impact that it could potentially have on your brand.
Exactly. And I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. The only issue that I take with that is if he in fact did those things, he needs to go seek help. And she needs to go get some help too, right? Because that's trauma if she hasn't, right? And if he hasn't. Because you know, Diddy has been in the public's eye for a long time and he's been through a lot, right? We've all watched him go through a lot, especially with the death of Kim Porter, the mother of three of his children, right? So um, especially because it was so sudden. So, you know, it's just it's disheartening to see these kinds of things happening. And again, like I said, I don't know whether or not those things are true. If they're not true, Cassie ought to be ashamed of herself because that's like extortion. But if they are true, then Diddy really needs to go seek help if he hasn't already.
Because it
Um,
could be a middle ground situation where, you know, she might have done those things, felt like it was wrong, but she needed to do it to try to advance her career. And then he felt like, oh, she was agreeing to it, but it's still wrong on both ends. You know, I'm thinking maybe that could be a possibility where, like, that's where they're both wrong, per se. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
maybe, or it also could have been a perception thing, right? Like if you are always okay with something and you don't say that you're not okay, then they don't know that it's necessarily wrong. You see what I'm saying? That they're doing something wrong. And so that's why communication is key. Like if somebody does something you don't like, you got to tell them. Otherwise, you might end up in a
I
spot
already
like
know
this.
that. Yeah, that you didn't like what was going on. Yeah, I definitely think that this was a tough one because, like you guys said, um, I saw an article that recently talked about a law that they had in New York that was going to that extended the statute of limitations for certain types of crimes, and that law recently was running. That the time frame for that law rather was recently running out, and so she had until like this last day to file it, and so that was like one of the reasons why it may have came out at this point in time, just simply because this was like her last option to do it at that point in time. And if you guys give me just 1 second, I'll look up that article. But I also think that again too, just the conversation between it all, the fact that I think that too, the conversation between everything, you know what I'm saying? The fact that, again, I think, excuse me, and that law is the Adult Survivor Act, which allows people in New York to say that they were victims of sexual abuse and to file civil suits after the statute of limitation has expired. The 1 year window to bring cases under that law the next week. So I think that was another reason why maybe the timing for the lawsuit might have came about. I do agree with you, Malik. I think a little bit of this may have been a little bit of, okay, well, if I'm kind of like that old school, if I'm sleeping with the record exec, then maybe my albums might get moved a little bit forward. There might have been some level of self-interest in as far as moving on with the career thing with this, as well as again, there could have been, some form
Because there are
of.
some reports. Let me quickly. I'll let you go. But I just want to clarify. There are some
Oh no, go
reports
ahead,
that,
go ahead.
like, Diddy made her, sleep with various men. It's kind of like she had to kind of agree to that a little bit. Like, unless she said she was raped by, those said men, then it's like, okay, you got to bring those guys forward. So it's like I can see how, like, she might have accepted that but didn't want to, but just to advance her career. I can see that angle. But if those men did indeed rape her, that's another issue. But that's what
Yeah,
was
but
reported.
what you just described sounds like pimping. Pimping and
Right, right. That's what I'm saying. Like, she kind of agreed to it, but it's still wrong and it's still illegal on both ends. But she kind of accepted the,
yeah, and
behavior.
that's what I'm saying about, not speaking up. Like, obviously if somebody puts their hand on you, there's not, I mean, you could say don't hit me and that's not going to stop them. But in a
Yeah, I
situation
don't be
like that,
lying.
that's
It's
a little
my
different.
situation.
You know what I'm saying? But that definitely does go to psychological abuse, right? Because if somebody's already in a fragile mental state and they're able to be susceptible to a point where they're like, yeah, y'all advance your career. If you sleep with these dudes over here and you're like, okay, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that necessarily you're a bad person. It just means you're susceptible to that type of influence. And the other thing about it is, though, Cassie and Diddy were together for years. It's not like they were only together for a short period of time. They were together for years, broke up, got back together. You know what I mean? So, the hope is that, I don't know. I don't even know what to say because it's like you said, it's dicey, right? Because it happened so quickly. The lawsuit came out so quickly and then it settled so fast without any details. It's kind of hard to be able to gauge anything because it literally settled in like a day, right? Like it came out and then the next day it was settled. And so the quickness in which it was taken care of, it makes it kind of hard to gauge. People can always make the assumption like, oh yeah, he did it. But for all we know, he had stuff on her too, right? And they decided, he, rather than putting it out there, right? He decided, all right, boom. What we're going to do is we're going to settle this real fast. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to protect your image because I never said anything bad about you. I never did anything to you. I'm going to continue to protect your image. And let's just go ahead and settle this because you already put this out there. That also could be a scenario. All that is speculation, right? At the end of the day, we have absolutely no idea what happened between them, and we have no idea what was in that lawsuit. Typically, that's public record when it's filed, but I haven't seen it because what could have happened is, well, no, because that stuff is out there. Once it's filed, it's
Yeah, yeah.
public
She
record.
alleged that, that he was, beating and punching her, that he was filming like her having sex with other men or forcing her to do that while he was doing some masturbation and filming it. So it was like a lot that's going on. So like if he did do those filming parts and they had the filming and they both had it, it's like, yeah, it makes sense. Like, okay, the courts are going to look at it this way. And then like, well, if it's like where she kind of agreed to some of that stuff, it's like, so it's
Right.
like, yes, I can see how both parties is like, all right, settlement is best for us both because it's like, they're going to look at it like Diddy is a rich and powerful man. And maybe I did agree to some of this stuff. So, it might be a long drawn out process where, nobody really gets any like type of victory. It's like all of his
Right.
antics
So,
come out and then her
right.
story is
And can she prove, like you said, like that it was completely forced?
yeah,
If
beyond a
some
reasonable
things
doubt.
could be,
Well, not
you know what I'm
beyond
saying? So
evidence.
that part could make it more of a situation where it may be more valuable for them to, you know what I'm saying, settle it outside of courts because of the fact that proving the claims that they need to prove, you know what I'm saying, can be a little bit more challenging. Because again, you know, to actually file, you just have to have this presumption that this is something that took place, or that, you know what I'm saying, that this is more than likely the truth. But then once you actually get into the courts, that's when you have to go ahead and prove it, you know. And of course, this isn't beyond a
But
reasonable doubt, but this is
no,
more.
because it's a
But
civil.
that's what I said. This is
Yeah,
It's
it
simple.
beyond
Yeah, I
yeah. So it's
understand
not.
that.
Yeah. So it's
a
by
preponderance of
presumption. It's
the
a
evidence.
presumption.
Yeah.
Yeah. The preponderance of the
So
evidence pretty much means, let me just explain what that means in regular people language. Preponderance of the evidence means, like, you see these justice scales we all have in our little box. You take and you put sand in each side of the balance of the scale. It just has to be 1 grain more on one side than the other. So it just has to seem more likely than not that it could have happened. So the standard is different in civil court. And that right there also is another thing, right? Because if you're talking about criminal court, that's beyond a reasonable doubt. That means there can be no other story other than this, right? And if that's the case, then that's, first of all, you're not going to see a settlement in a criminal case. You'll see a plea, right? And with those types of allegations, there's jail time associated with it. But in a civil case, we're talking about money. You know what I mean? We're talking about money. We're talking about how much money. We're talking about assets. We're talking about things like that. And so, I guess it's tough because, excuse me, we don't know everything, and we're not gonna ever know everything, right? But just on from Diddy's side, we don't know squat. And honestly, if I was his lawyer, I would want it to be that way too. It never justifies abuse, though, right? Especially if he in fact did abuse her. And again, like I said before, like, they broke up at one point and got back together, which happens so often. Because look at Keke Palmer broke up with old boy Darius Jackson. They got back together. Then they broke up again. Cassie was with Diddy, broke up with him, got back together. Then, there's Jonathan Majors. Now, Jonathan Majors is different because now we have the inverse, right? Where his ex was alleging that he put his hands on her. And come to find out, he didn't. She was actually abusing him. And some abusers use the criminal justice system to further abuse their person. You see what I'm saying? Which is really, really sad. It's really unfortunate. As a criminal defense attorney, I've absolutely seen it. I've had clients that have been abused, and then and in a struggle, let's say a shirt gets torn, or they hit the abuser. The abuser will go then call the police and say, hey, this person hit me. And then my client will go to jail when in fact they were just defending themselves. So, and the thing about Jonathan Majors is then it came out later on that the young lady, she was stripping. She had more, she did more. You know what I mean? She did more. And but the going back and forth, we'll dig more into Jonathan Majors in a second, but there was somebody I wanted to mention, because remember how earlier I said it's not just men against women, sometimes it's women against women. But one thing that, like, people know that it happens with women against men, and we're going to dig deeper in that in a second, but one of the things that you never hear about is same-sex relationships, abuse in same-sex relationships. And that absolutely happens. And that's dangerous and scary too, because, sometimes, especially when you have people that are still closeted, they don't necessarily want to, out themselves. So it'll come off as just being a fight, right, between two people. But the thing is, it's a lot deeper than a fight, because there's all these other aspects of abuse that have taken place, both mentally and emotionally. You know what I mean? And so, like, for a good example of a same-sex situation is there's a famous TikToker. Her name is Deaf Bay. She's a deaf woman. She has a new girlfriend. She went over to visit her new girlfriend. Her girlfriend beat her up real bad, hospitalized her. She was She was out for the count for a number of days. You know what I'm saying? You see pictures of her face is all swollen up, and they're really messed up. And then like 2 weeks later, she was back with her. Like, I still love her though. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the mentality, right? And the sad thing about it is it's not always just about being mentally broken, because it was a new relationship, right? So that what that tells me, indicates to me, is it was already something going on with her self-esteem to feel like she needed to return to that situation. Um, I just hope it doesn't keep happening, right? Because that's scary and it's dangerous.
I also think a lot of times too, when we talk about people being in abusive relationships and why they kind of return, it's like, I it's sad, but like I hate to say this, but it's almost like a trauma bonding type of thing. Like it's like, because you feel like you went through this thing with this one person, now all of a sudden it kind of like makes you want to, you know what I'm saying, stick with them or hope that things may change or whatever the case may be. And that's tough, right? Because it's like, the love is deep, right? They are going to change. They're just going through a couple things, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? And so, people think like, okay, well, let me just stick it out. Like, this can change. This can become something different. And I think that, unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen. And in rare situations, sometimes people may end up losing their life in a situation like that. So, I would urge anybody who is going through anything like that to seek help, to, what I'm saying, look for resources that can kind of help you in that situation. Because again, another thing that happens with a lot of abusers um, it, is that they like to isolate individuals so that they do feel helpless, so that they don't feel like they have anyone that they can reach out to or could tell or could, what I'm saying, report them to. So that's another factor that I think that people have to weigh in when we look at saying, "Oh, why didn't you just get up and go?" or "Why didn't you just leave?" Another attribute to that as well is sometimes people don't necessarily know that they're even being abused. They may not know it until they kind of repeat some things to someone else, and it is brought to their attention that, hey, that's not normal, or hey, that's not what typically goes on in relationships, or you are you okay type of situation, and the person is just thinking that they're going about their day. Oh, this is just lollygag the ups and downs of a relationship, and until someone else kind of brings it to their attention, and it's like, no, sweetheart, that's or sir, that's abuse. You know what I'm saying? Like that, you don't have to subject yourself to that.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting thing. I think, when it comes to these abusive situations, we got to look at, you know, not only like the individuals that are in the situation, but society as a whole, so we can best find a way to kind of minimize these situations, because these situations are always going to happen. But I think we've gotten better in terms of how we react to, you know, women going through domestic violence. Not maybe not so like maybe same sex couples, or maybe towards the men's situation, men's plight. But when it comes to men and women, I think, as I said, we have improved. Maybe maybe it's been a little bit over reported, so it gets watered down. So that's one of the fears. I think we just need to come up with a little bit of something to how do I put it, prevent from those false reports, those money grab where you're just trying to collect money, nothing wrong has happened to you. So I just think we need to get better on that front. And we can, and I think that's the best we can do. I mean, obviously things aren't going to be perfect, but I think that would be a bigger step in the right direction.
So there's a federal law that has been adopted by all the states, and it's a family violence law, right? And family violence, battery family violence, you have different degrees of it, right? But battery family violence, the first one is a misdemeanor. I think the first two are misdemeanors. I know that's the case in the state of Georgia. Then anything after that is a felony, right? And there has to be a special type of relationship. The law outlines what that type of relationship is. And what I've come to realize is that first and foremost, a lot of abuse is underreported because the thing is, people don't want the government in their business, right? They think, oh, I can handle it myself, right? And I'm just talking about the physical aspects of it. I can handle it myself because the thing about that law is Bob and Mary get into a fight, right? They have this big knockout, drag out argument, and it gets physical. Whether it's just them tussling, whether he nudges her as he's walking out the door, whether she throws a glass and it hits him, whether, they like anything can happen, right? Or she's attacking him and he's grabbing her to stop her from attacking him. All of those things can happen. All of those happen. Those are some of the most common forms of family violence battery I see, right, in my work. And what happens is, let's say it's an argument. If it's something as simple as a nudge, I'm trying to leave, you're not trying to let me leave, and bump you. And she calls me, oh, he pushed me down, he tried to choke me, whatever she says, right? She could have easily just lied completely, nobody touched anybody, or it was a serious situation. Police are called. Whether they called the police, a neighbor called the police, whatever, right? Once the police are called, somebody's going to jail. Somebody's going. You don't know who started it, they're both going to jail. Both of them are claiming they touched each other, they're both going to jail. If just somebody is going to jail. And when that person is like, oh, it didn't happen like that, or, oh, they didn't touch me, they didn't do anything like that that makes them not want the case to move forward, I don't want to press charges, whatever the reason is, I don't want to press charges. They don't have a say-so anymore. At that point, the state will take the case and run with it, and they will make the decision as to whether or not that case is going to move forward. They do not have any say-so about whether or not that case is going to move forward, right? And so the thing about that is, when people make these false allegations about domestic violence, you have the potential to completely ruin a person's life because nobody can stop that train once it's rolling except for the conductor. And the conductor in that case is the state. And so, because even if it comes before a judge, judges have the authority to end a case, but it's not always just, oh, it's over because I said so. Things have to happen, right? So we're not going to dig down deep into the legal aspects of it all, but just people having that understanding that if I go to jail for this case might not go away. That right there, that can cause people to not want to call the police, right? That too. Or I just want him to leave me alone. I don't want him to go to jail. That happens all the time too. And when the police arrive and they get called, somebody's going. And the thing about the way that law is written, if convicted or if you take a plea on it, that thing can't go away. It can't be expunged from your record, can't be restricted, it can't be removed, it can't be any of that. And then you also lose your ability, like here in Georgia, you lose your ability to carry a firearm and any ammunition. There's definitely loopholes there, here and there, but that's the basic, that's the law at its bare root, right? And so just understanding the legality of that and recognizing that in certain circumstances, when you're adding those circumstances to that law, it's not always going to be a good look to get the police involved, right? But at the same time, it's not okay to just be out here willy-nilly punching people in the face, especially a significant other, right? And abusing them. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to go in here also real quick and just add that if anyone has been or are dealing with any type of domestic abuse, we do have a hotline number. This is a national hotline that you guys can give a call to. They do have interpreters for over 200 different languages. It is open 24/7 and it is a toll free call. It is 800 799 7233. Once again, that phone number is 800 799 7233. Or you can text by texting the word smart start, 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 start to 88788. Once again, that's start to 88788. And that was one resource that can try to help you with any type of issue that you may be facing. So I just want to add that in there.
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, domestic abuse is dicey. It can happen to anyone. And one of the things I wanted to say about men who are often abused, that is the most underreported form of domestic violence out there. I think E said it, or maybe it was Malik. I can't remember which one of you guys said it, but it was more so about they don't want to, because of what it looks like. You're getting beat up by a girl, you know what I mean? And people don't understand what that looks like for a man. A lot of times it doesn't always have to be physical. With men, it's a whole lot more psychological and emotional abuse going on. Some women do get volatile, start throwing things, tearing stuff up, stuff like that. But there's a whole lot more psychological, mental abuse that happens that's delivered by women to men. And men often don't report it because they don't want to be made to look, quote unquote, weak. And the thing of it is that it's not right, right? When you see there's domestic violence shelters that are filled with women, you never see domestic violence shelters with men in them. Not very often, right? And so, I think that there needs to be definitely more awareness with regards to domestic violence amongst men, and there has to be more compassion, right? Like, it's not a laughing matter. There's nothing funny about it because people really, really are hurt and broken behind being abused. And a lot of times people get broken and they move through life not knowing that they're hurt or broken and have the possibility to break and bleed on others who had nothing to do with the trauma that they experienced. But the thing about it is they have to first accept and own the fact that it happened to them. And so it's definitely important to remember that the lives, the mentality, and the emotional space of our men is equally important to that of a woman in a domestic violence situation.
Yeah. So real quick, I just wanted to go over the Jonathan Major situation where he was accused of domestic violence against his long-term girlfriend, ex-girlfriend now. So that situation was very interesting because they basically ignored his cross complaint where he was talking about specific injuries that he suffered from his ex-girlfriend, and there was video out where he didn't, initiate any type of contact. It was like a slight, he tried to move out of the way and she kind of bumped into him, stuff like that. So these are the type of situations where men don't get benefit of doubt. He lost a lot of sponsorships and deals. Basically, what we know as now Me Too'd. He got Me Too'd, where a lot of his sponsorships and a lot of things were pulling out away from him, and his support was going away. He was hit hard financially, so that's still an ongoing situation, to my understanding. But a lot is coming out to where she is not in the most favorable light, and her positioning is not of strength in her case in particular. So we'll keep a look at that, but I just wanted to talk about that briefly because I know we're coming up on time. So let me talk about the Black business. It's Stand With Us Clothing. It's a clothing store where you can get like sweatshirts, hoodies. You can get varsity jackets, stuff like that. Pretty cool. I'm not too sure if they have too many female options though, unfortunately, but definitely a lot of stuff for men. I guess females, if you want a little varsity jacket or a little sweatshirt, you can get that as well. So once again, Stand With Us Clothing, standwithusclothing.com. If y'all want to check that out. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the Black Book of the Month or the Book of the Month. It doesn't have to be a Black book, but the Book of the Month is a Black History Reader. 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask by Dr. Claude Anderson. It's a really interesting book that helps you think about questions that you want to ask to help you further know your history, especially if you're African American person trying to acquire some more knowledge about African American history, stuff like that. And I have the quote. Okay, so the quote. This quote really spoke to me because, as we try to get better every day, we're trying to build upon our habits. So this quote is by Herbert Kaufman: "The habit of persistence is the habit of victory." So, in any case, as long as you persist, even in a domestic violence situation, if you want to seek that justice, you have to be persistent about the justice you want to seek, even when, it's an uphill battle. Even when people are against you and telling you not to do something, trying to sway you one way, you have to be persistent in justice that you're seeking. And I think that's one of the ways you can look at this quote. If in any area activity you're trying to do, persistence is key and trying to make that a habit, especially the positive things you're trying to do. So that's the quote of the week for this show. And that's all I have, unless you guys have anything you want to add to the topic.
No, there's nothing else I wanted to add to the topic except I just wanted to reiterate. I wanted to provide a second time the National Domestic Violence Hotline information. It's a toll-free number. It's a national hotline. And they speak over 200 languages, including English and Spanish, as he provided earlier. That phone number is 1-800-799-7233. Again, that number is 1-800-799-7233. Or that number can receive text messages. You can text that number if you need help. Aside from calling 911, that number, that text is, first you text the word START. That's S as in Sam, T as in Tom, A as in Alpha, R as in Robert, T as in Tom, START, to 88788. Again, the number you text START to is 88788. Other than that, we want to thank you all for tapping in with us today. I know today was a little bit longer than usual. We haven't done one this long in a while, but the information was important. And so we wanted to make sure we got that out to you. Please make sure you check us out on Wednesday for our What's Up Wednesday segment on Instagram. Our socials will all be posted right here at the end. You can also catch me on the Tagged app. My name is Sam I Am. That's SAMM. Then it's like this little triangle I symbol, and then Yam, YAMM. What else? Yeah, you're gonna see plenty of episodes as we have so much content. So please feel free to go through, like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and all that jazz. And again, like I said, we're coming up on 3 years. I think 3 years is next week. So we look forward to continuing to providing y'all with more content. Ellis, do you have anything?
No, I'll see you guys next week. Tap in with us. Happy holidays to those who may be celebrating with their family, or Indigenous Day to others. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. If y'all guys want us to talk about a different topic, let us know. Shoot us a DM on Instagram or send us an email, whatever y'all need to do. Just reach out to us and we'll get back to you.
Oh, and if you want to be on the show, make sure you hit us up too. Other than that,
All right,
Be good to
guys,
each other.
peace out.
All right, peace. Middle East.